Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. So we as women, sometimes we are taught to be quiet. We're taught to be silent. We're taught to be kind of in the background or not really climb up that corporate ladder or even start our own company. And so today we're going to talk about how to break free from some of those beliefs or cultural traits that we have been raised as, because we as women are wonderful, right? So without further ado, Sophia Mikelionis is in our house, and we are going to talk about all those things. And so my name is Charisse Walker, your host. And without further ado, Sophia, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Hello. So I'm Sophia, and I'm a former corporate leader turned leadership coach. I help ambitious moms, entrepreneurs stop leading from I can't. In so many of my workshops, I hear, I can't slow down, I can't say no, I can't drop the ball. And together we identify ways to shift those patterns into small strategic steps. So that way success, it feels doable. Success feels light and easy instead of self-sacrifice. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. And yeah, success, what does that mean to you, right? It means something different to all of us. But as you're coaching women, what do you find success is?
You know, it's funny because typically success is something that can be measured on paper. It's always like, I have to get this role done. I have to get this promotion. I have to get this role. I have to get married. I have to have kids. Like all these things are on paper. But I like to boil it down to truly like what success feels like. For me, sure, I could have those things, but success for me feels like enjoying that first cup of coffee in the morning instead of, planning the Keurig, grabbing the coffee out of the door, drinking it while you're, driving to wherever. For me, success is truly enjoying the feel of like fresh sheets and like the crisp crunch of them. So I like to encourage my clients and the women that I work with to feel success. What does success feel like, and how do you want it to feel versus what does it look like on paper and how does everyone else measure it?
I like that because we hear this plan your vision board and say things, and you need to declare and you need to do different things. And so for success, it's making sure that you know what that is to you. Because
Yeah.
if you don't know what success means to you, then how are you going to achieve it? What's your end game? You're just circling the drain. I love that. That's a good analogy. And I envision it like walking into a nice hotel room that has those crisp sheets. Well, the hotel room might cost a lot of money, but you're successful and you can afford it, so it's not a big deal, right?
Yeah. Or even just crisp sheets at home, right?
Yeah.
Like how often do you truly wash your sheets? Maybe you need to increase the rotation instead of every week, maybe twice a week, but
Mhm.
making time for those things that feel good to you, I would say.
Mhm. No, okay, so what made you decide to leave the corporate world?
Man, it was a really hard decision. Okay, I was climbing the corporate ladder and I was getting promotion after promotion. I loved it. Like
Mhm.
that was my jam. I was everyone's go-to. But in order to do that, I was making so many small sacrifices along the way.
Mhm.
Instead of eating a lunch, I was digging around in my purse for that granola bar that I put there a month ago. I know I have an emergency granola bar. I was leaving my home. I have two kids, and I would leave before the sun came up and return before the sun went down. But my daughter, I would braid her hair every 2 or 3 days, kids, whatever. And I went to kiss her goodbye, and I looked at her hair, and I was like, "Holy cow, her hair looks terrible. Like it looks like a rat's nest is on top of her head." And I'm like, "How did I forget to do her hair? When did I do it last?" And in the midst of me beating myself up behind that, I realized that her dad, my husband, he can make sure she has food to eat. He can make sure she gets to school. He can make sure she's bathed, but no one can make sure that her hair is done like mom can. And I'm like, this is more important to me than cranking out that presentation for Bill. This is more important to me than putting together that sales pitch. I got to reshape some things. So I took a step away from corporate. It was a small sabbatical. It was quiet, but a lot of my coworkers were like, "Hey, Sophia, help me with this project. What should I focus on?" And I really instilled in them, like, "Hey, let's recognize these patterns that you're living into, that you're repeating. Hey, let's hold up the mirror. Let's call a thing a thing." And I was like, "Wow, I think I'm coaching people. Wait, I should host a workshop." So that's why I left corporate and how I kind of got into the space that I am now.
Isn't it interesting? Motherhood really does make a difference for women, and not everybody, because we're all different. But that was kind of a similar thing, is realizing I'm missing out on this time with my children. And even now that I've become self employed, because my first four were in the corporate world, my last two are self employed. And sometimes here's a very vulnerable moment. I think sometimes I left corporate to have more freedom, but I find
Yeah.
myself just as busy, if not more, and it's like, "I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done." And I had that conversation with myself yesterday with my daughter who, um, I dropped her off to school and, she's in jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair I brushed, but it's not done. Today it was. But, I see this girl from our neighborhood, she's, like, dressed super cute, her hair's all perfectly done, everything, and I'm like, "At what point did I say, 'Hmm'?" And my daughter likes the way she dresses, but it's like, need more attention with my kids.
Yeah.
And maybe it's their tennis shoes. Like I've tried, honestly, I've tried multiple times. Let's go get you new shoes and stuff. They're like, no, I like it. But, it's just at what point and where are you on your spectrum of I'm okay with the way my kids present? Can I do better? Because at one point, yes, they need to like how they look, not mom style or whatever. But at the same time, if it's like frumpy look like you just rolled out of bed, maybe not.
But
Yeah,
but what, for me, it's making sure that I have the mental capacity, the space in my mind to be present for them. Like when my kids come home from school and, they're frowning, am I so busy in my world and my deliverables that I can't pay attention, or do I brush them off?
right.
And I thankfully now, yes, I have the time freedom and the ability to build my schedule, but it is me constantly practicing and telling myself like, "Hey, it's okay to put a pin in this. You can come back to it. It's okay if you don't respond to that email within the hour that you receive it." Because to me, like having mental space for those things, not even just my daughter, but just mental space to enjoy those things. We talked about sometimes people book a massage and they don't have time to go to the massage, or you run frantically there and you're like, "I'm here, I'm here." But have you given yourself the space from work to actually enjoy it, or are you just checking off a box? So, yeah, it's me constantly juggling that, but having that leading with that as my priority, leading myself differently instead of just following the cadence of everyone else.
I agree, and I think having raised the first 4 and then the last 2, it goes so quick, you can't rewind the clock. What's important? Because at some point, they're gonna be so used to you not being around or being focused on them. Like,
Yeah,
are you addicted to a game that you're playing and while your daughter's sitting there telling you a story about their day, and you're looking at your phone instead of them?
yeah.
And that's something where I've really tried to be like, okay, put the computer down, put the phone down, put something because they're talking to you. And my 12-year-old, I said, how come you never tell me about your friends? And she told me yesterday, and I'm like, okay, well, this is a reality that's not really reality, but it's her reality. So it's just a lot of conversations and making sure that we're there.
You're right. It's also about like breaking habits because to your point, like a game is addictive, right? And you're on it, but at some point we have to self-regulate because the world won't do it for us. If you think about it, I mean, when our parents and our parents' went to work, that was it. You had a little timesheet. You clocked in and you clocked out. When you went home, that was it. It was family time. That world doesn't exist for the majority of us. Some people still are hourly and clock in and clock out, but it's up to us to put the phone down. It's up to us to put it away. It's up to us to try to be present and to ask those questions. And that's really tough when the world around us doesn't necessarily value those things, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm listening to his book on tape, which we won't get into, but it talks about that, how this generation is like the first ones to have a screen phone that they were raised on. Because like my other kids, they had a flip phone.
Yeah.
They didn't quite have that smart, but now they have the smartphone and it's this whole new world that we're coming to focus on. Okay, so I want to switch gears for a second and let's
Sure.
talk about women. And you talk about how we need to have more women at the table. Um, what do you mean by that?
Yes. So the people in charge typically sit at a table and make all the decisions, right? And often when you start working, you yearn for a seat at the table. You yearn to be a decision maker. But if women burn out before they get to the table or they get that seat at the table, the decision makers, the faces of the decision makers, they don't change. The stories of the decision makers, the lived realities of the decision makers don't change. So a lot of us with different diverse perspectives, you know, never get heard because those voices aren't there. Those voices of reason, the person who says, yes, this is a good idea. However, so in the work that I do, I try to encourage women to find small ways to recognize these habits, these patterns, these small self-sacrifices, so that way they can lead themselves differently, so that way they can get a seat at the table. Their voices, our voices can be heard, and the world can change a little bit. I know it sounds very soapbox-ish, but the world can change a little bit because those voices are part of the conversation instead of an afterthought.
I used to be one of those, "Oh, come to me. I'm gonna do all these things. I'm gonna go out and be this person, but this is really what I want over here." And so how do you teach women to say, to verbalize to people, "This is what I want?" A good example, and I'll just so you kind of understand what I'm asking is we have this trek where it's like a pioneer trek and it's every so often, but I have had 4 kids go through it. My youngest has actually done it 3 times because we've moved multiple times. And so it's like a pioneer trek where they reenact a certain, you have hand carts and stuff like that. And so they kind of understand how in Utah pioneers came here, that's how they founded it. And so they call it mom and pa, where you have a husband and wife and they're over a group of people. So they reenact like this whole family situation as if they're on Pioneer. I have wanted to do that forever, right? Like I want to be this mom and pa. And so all my kids have gone through it. We've never been asked, quite frankly, because I've usually had some surgery or a baby at the time. So I understand that. But this time I could have gone.
Yeah.
Like, I wanna go, and we had just moved into this house, so people didn't really know who we were. So I went and found out who the people in charge. I said, "I would love to be part of this." And so I actually finally, for the first time, I verbalized it. I told people, "Hey, I'm here. I'm here to help if you need it." We weren't chosen, but
Oh,
there's always a reason for everything. I get it. I understand the reason now, but, that's something where how do you encourage women or what's your advice to women to say, "This is what I want, like, I'm here, like, do you see me?" What's your advice on that?
so first, I want you to write it down yourself. Like often these things, these are ideas in our minds that we think, but sometimes we never vocalize. And we think that people just know because we're here and we've participated multiple times or have been on the periphery multiple times. Hey, I want to get in. I want you to physically write it down because there's something between getting it from your brain to physically writing it down, not putting it on your phone, but physically writing it down that makes it concrete and it helps you connect to your vision, right? And then finding ways to use your voice to indicate like, hey, I would love to do this. Like if you're in corporate, I always talk about starting with a boundary, right? Like let's just say you do want to get home at 5 o'clock to see your kids. You do need to go to that basketball game that your son is playing at. And often we say to ourselves when we're flustered, I've had enough. I can't do this. And then we try to put up a boundary. But that thing that you wrote down, that goal, that vision, I want you to draw a circle around it. Like that is what you're going to protect, right? So that way, all of your decisions, all of the ways that you show up are protecting that vision. So it's easier to say, you know what? Can we complete 2 slides instead of 5? I can complete the other 3 tomorrow when I log back on because that is at the center of your universe, and that's how you're showing up, and that's where you're vocalizing. Also, if you write it down, when you speak to your spouse or when you speak to the other people you work with, that is at the top of your mind. Like, hey, I do want to volunteer for the mom and pop, or I do want to volunteer to be the mom and pop, or I I have to be at this basketball game. So what does that look like? I just leading with those things first and creating a soft circle around it, it kind of eases some of the tension around a boundary. Because normally when people say boundaries, they think of like a Wild West showdown, like who's gonna win, me or them? But instead, if you soften it and you think about, man, how do I make this possible? It's easier to step into it. It's easier to kind of push back and manage your day or your week or your month around those things.
And I'm gonna take that one step further because I love that. And also saying, okay, what type of like if you're an entrepreneur, what type of client do I want to work with? And what are my boundaries that I'm willing to do? Because and physically writing that down, that now, like, you're making a declaration, like, "This is what I want, this is who I wanna work with, and this is what I'm willing to put up with or not put up with." As we were talking before the show, somebody was not being nice, and and how do you handle that? Is there truth to it or is there not? And then, do I need to be talked to like that or treated like that? So, that's such good advice.
Yeah, and I would agree because sometimes when you see it written down in the midst of it, if you find that a client is not being nice, you say to yourself, like, I want to work with nice clients. Why am I doing this? Let me think twice or let me show up differently because this is not ideal.
Mhm.
Or, if you find that it's really hard to negotiate leaving for basketball practice because you want to get to your kids' basketball, you can see it. You're like, this is what I said I wanted. So why am I not vocalizing that. Why am I not like it just it encourages you to ask yourself those questions so that way you can show up differently.
That's such good advice. Okay, so I'm going to read this. It says, leading from flow, not fire drills. So let's talk about leadership. And I think it kind of goes in relation to writing things down. But can you expand on your words with leading from flow, not fire drills?
Ooh, yes. So I had a very demanding role in corporate. I worked with the C-suite, and basically every day was a fire drill. It's a small ask, right? Hey, we just got some new information. We need you to update all the slides, right? But that's 30 slides to update. And we have a short time period to get this done. Like that is a fire drill. And in corporate, every day was a fire drill. Oh my goodness, I have to get this done. Or even when it comes to your kids, you find out that a project is due tomorrow. Oh my goodness, we got to drop everything and go run to the craft store and see what we have, right? But from flow, so that's fire drill. But from flow is realizing the patterns or what energizes you and leading from that, right? I'm a planner, right? So I would go to my manager or leadership and say, yes, I understand that this is the ask, but how could we get 2 of these things done instead of all 5 done now and immediately? What would the minimum viable product, MVP look like? Or even if I'm talking to my child, I wanna reprimand them, "Mom's a planner. You should have told me this sooner."
Mm.
But saying, "Okay, we need to have a plan. What type of grade do you wanna get on this? How late do you wanna stay up on this? What do we have around the house?" But grounding yourself on what feels good in the moment, where you thrive, what culture, what environment really feels good to you, and then starting from there, right? Because if the other person gives you urgency and you're trying to operate in urgency and you know that that isn't where you thrive best or that isn't how you show up best, leading with that and working around it.
Mhm.
That's the flow state. Yeah. Recognizing those patterns. Yeah.
That's great advice. All right. So, how do you help women in leadership now that you are an entrepreneur yourself? What with women? What do you like to help them with? Is it to improve their leadership style? Is it to help them realize what they're doing? Like, what are you coaching women?
Decision making under pressure. That is my jam because there's so much pressure around us. Pressure to get it right, right? Pressure to be the breadwinner, pressure to always have the right answer, pressure to always be available, right? It's those types of pressures that were kind of like ingrained in us from itty bitty, right? You should always have an answer. You should always be a good host. You should do this. You should do this. It's like we're surrounded by the shoulds. And it's being true to yourself in the moment to truly understand, like, let's hold up a mirror. How do you make the best decisions? How are you a best leader, right? The best leader. And Then discovering patterns and ways to integrate just small shifts to make those real. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client, Lindsay. She was the hardest client ever because she said one thing, but she did something completely different, right? She said that, she felt like she was always in fire drill mode, always leading from urgency, right? So we talked about it. Like, let's look at your bedtime routine, right? Like, what time do you go to bed? Well, I always work until midnight because I have to get these things done. Okay, what would it look like if you went to bed at a consistent hour? 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Well, I have to check my emails. Okay, but they will be there for you in the morning. And then I even walked it back for her. Okay, so you're staying up till midnight, getting these things done consistently. What happens in the morning? Yeah, you wake up grumpy. What happens? How do you fix that? You over caffeinate. You're on your third cup of coffee by 9 a.m.
Mm,
By 10 a.m., you're, kind of grumpy and a jerk to people. So if you want to show up as your best self, we kind of have to work backwards. We have to start drawing some lines and
mm,
keeping those lines. And for her, we gave her phone a bedtime. You know what? Your phone, your laptop, they stay in the laptop stays in the car. Like,
mhm.
yes, you bring it home, but it stays in the car. If you really need it, if someone calls you, it's within arm's reach for you to go get it. She had a garage, so for people who park on the street, you're
I was
probably
gonna
like,
say,
"I can't leave my
I
laptop in the car."
can't.
But she leaves it there, and then the phone, we set a bedtime, just like you would tuck your kids in, she puts her phone in a drawer, before she enters her house, like, there's, like, a little kitchen drawer there.
Mhm,
We got her an alarm clock that like, an old-fashioned alarm clock, because I know a lot of people use their phone as an alarm, and that made a huge difference. No, like, her world did not blow up overnight because she didn't respond to this email. People started learning to be self-sufficient. So, again, it's how do you make good decisions under pressure? And it really starts with how are you creating pressure on yourself? Like,
mhm,
you have to create a space to think, space to allow creativity to flow, space to recover. And if you're always on, always available, just because that's your go-to and that's how you got that promotion, it's going to be really hard to lead yourself strategically and show up for others. So yeah, that's one main way that we do it. So we find the pattern, we set up small habits, small ways to pivot, and then we walk in that and we label it, and it feels good.
Okay, so I have interviewed so many women, and I have never heard that before. And that is such good. I'm so glad you shared that. It's such good advice because uh, it's just like a doctor's office. They close down, usually they stop answering their phones at 4. You know
Yeah,
that. So if you want to get a hold of them, you probably should call before 4, right? And so that's the same thing. We as women want, I'm doing this thing as a favor for my clients today, and I'm getting more angry about it. The more I'm like, wait a second, they're wanting me to help them. And yet I'm driving 40 minutes down to go do something. Why am I doing this? And so I'm like, wait a second, I'm not okay with this, and it's very detailed, but it's like there's a line where going above and beyond and being taken advantage of. And we need to learn that more. And the fact that our phone rules our lives, like if you forget your phone at home, I bet you money you turn around and go get it, right? 25 years ago, who cares? The phone didn't exist. There was a landline, right? And so I think that the advice that you're giving her, she probably feels a lot happier now, a lot freer,
yeah.
and not tied to something that controls her life. That is so good.
Yeah. And I think the tough part too is that our society rewards overgiving, overdoing, over availability. So it's kind of like it's like a mind warp. You're like, but I'm supposed to be available because if I am available and I get to it sooner than someone else, I can get a promotion. Or I'm supposed to have all these, I'm supposed to be a rock star mom all the time because then I could put it on IG or Instagram and all these things. Right? But that's why we have to get closer to our values and find what's truly important
Mhm.
and work backwards from there.
So good. Well, if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they find you?
So I have a YouTube channel. It's called Gearing Together. Every week I drop a link or video on just things you need to unlearn so that way you can lead yourself differently. And I also host workshops for small groups or speaking engagements. So either way, you could find me there.
Such good advice. Thank you so much. Um, One last question. Advice that you would give a new woman starting out as a mother, any advice that you could give her? What's something that you've learned?
I learned that I deserve to be on the to-do list. And often we are always running around doing things for our kids, for our families, for everyone else. And we think that self-sacrifice is a badge of honor as a mom. And yes, don't get me wrong. Like, you got a newborn, sure, you don't need a shower. Self-sacrifice needed, right? But that hustle life, that hustle theory, hustle patterns, they have a season, and you have to prioritize yourself in the midst of those seasons, right? So when I was a new mom, I would always have lipstick around because when I pass by that mirror, even if I smelled like poop, I would see the woman who I used to be. And it was a reminder to myself, like, hey, she's there. We're coming back in the midst of it. So I would encourage women today to add something to the list, their daily list. Weekly's okay. Their daily list that energizes them that they can do. Now, I'm not talking about self-care. Go get a massage. I'm talking about something within you. Is it a good laugh? Is it a hot cup of coffee? Is it your favorite color of lipstick that you put on? But something small that you can do for yourself that you can add to your week that just reconnects you with who you really are, because otherwise it gets forgotten. It's at the bottom of the list and you can't, there's a saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, but often we fail to look at what's inside that cup. Right? So sometimes I talk to moms who have been self-sacrificing for 16 years and they're like, it's fine. I'm used to it. I'll get back to myself when my kid gets in college. And I say, okay, but what's in your cup at that point? At that point, you have exhaustion in that cup, you have frustration, you have impatience in that cup, you have dead ends, dead split ends in that cup, right? Come on, like, it's okay to add a little bit of you in that cup, and so that's my advice. Pour something. Fill your cup with things that energize you, so that way, you're not only setting a good example for your little one, but for yourself.
Sophia, you are amazing. I love your advice, and I love how just you're so calm and just have all this wisdom. So thank you so much for being on.
You bet. It was a pleasure.
And Unbreakable Moms, be just that, be unbreakable. Life comes, it just hits us with so many different things all the time, but we are here because of the life that we have and the children that you have. And it's okay to put yourself first and look inside that cup. I love that advice and realize what's there, because if you haven't found your peace or your passion or your purpose, yes, being a mom is one of those, but making sure that you still have things to give is so important. So go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.